Hey girl, I know it's not our normal scheduled programming. However, it's another day and it's still time to unwind. Welcome to Conversations of Truth podcast. I'm Jaquila and you have entered a judgment-free zone. On last week's episode, I put y'all into some more of my business, child. I shared with you all moments in my life where changes to my mindset have begun to shift. From breaking up with my best friend, joining the military, and a failed marriage. One thing that each moment had in common was the presence of isolation. They say with elevation comes isolation, so it shouldn't always be joined with a negative perspective. But if you want the full tea from that episode, you're going to have to listen to it, sis. I know, I was supposed to be talking about choosing wrong. Then I felt like I owed y'all more on last week's episode. But the episode you're hearing today is a bonus to set things straight on why there will not be a continuation to last week's topic. As a preface, I am not a therapist. However, I can reassure you that life has hit me and each lady who joins us hard. Some harder than others, but that doesn't stop us from pushing forward. Okay, now let's get into the show. On last week's episode, I left you all with a question and promised to give you my answer. So here it is. The question posed was, what are you proud of yourself for? And I have to say, I'm proud of myself for a lot of things, but here recently, I'm more proud of myself for learning how to show me grace. It wasn't always easy, and I didn't know I needed it until I started to realize how hard I was on myself for things that were completely out of my control. I began to feel ashamed of who I was and noticed I hadn't been living in my truth. I was beginning to compare my life to others and living with regrets. So thank God for grace and self-reflection. So that brings me into why there won't be a continuation. Have you ever decided that you were going to do a thing and before you do that thing, something keeps nudging at you or tugging at you and you take a little bit longer to do it? You start pushing your deadlines and your goals back forward and you're like, oh, I'll get to it later, or maybe another day when I feel up to it, or I don't know, any kind of instinct that slows down your progression or slows down you doing whatever that thing is. Well, that's how I kind of been lately. Usually I'll get up and I'm able to knock out a podcast recording real quick, but this particular episode literally took me almost 2 weeks to record. And I know you guys wanted a continuation. You probably were waiting on it, but something was not sitting right with me. I had to sit with myself and recognize that I'm a private person, or more private than most people these days, because they'll tell you all their business on these social media platforms. However, since we're a growing family, I vow to be 100% authentic. And I cannot preach self-awareness, boundaries, and things of that nature and not live by them. How hypocritical would that be? So with that being said, I feel like I would be a complete fraud to lay out all of the occurrences from those situations in just one podcast. I also don't want it to seem like I'm bashing any one person, because my character also means a lot to me. And with doing that, I will be robbing myself of peace that comes from being true to myself, being that I know I didn't really want to post it or launch the podcast episode, but I felt like I owed it to y'all. But then I felt like I more so owed you guys the real me, because that's what I'm giving. So this is not a hard no to sharing information on those topics. I will begin to share more as the situation warrants it. So if I'm discussing boundaries, or if I'm discussing narcissism, or if I'm discussing maybe in our next episode of Choosing Wrong, I'll probably touch on situations from either of the occurrences, but I just won't do it in an entire podcast episode. I don't think that that's something that I should do, and I hope that you guys understand. Forgive me for misleading you. Again, this is a bonus episode, so you'll still get a full podcast episode on Wednesday for Choosing Wrong. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys the question of the day, because I'm going to give you an answer also. The question of the day to close out today's episode is, when are you the happiest version of yourself? So I want you to truly take some time to reflect and think about it throughout this week. Share it with a friend even, and I'll return my answer in the next episode. Don't forget to tune in to Conversations of Truth every Wednesday. And next episode, I'll be discussing choosing wrong. And I'm for real this time. Also, subscribe to Conversations of Truth on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor for notifications of new uploads. You can also join us on Instagram at Conversations of Truth, where we can have an extension of conversation. Feel free to leave comments with topics you'd like to be discussed, questions you may have, or if you're looking for sound advice. You will not be judged, and I'll answer best I can. Until next time, I love y'all, and remember, regardless of what it looks like, every day you have the opportunity to become a better version of yourself. I'll see you Wednesday. Bye.